اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد الفاتح لما أغلق والخاتم لما سبق ناصر الحق بالحق وهذه إلى صراطك المستقيم وعلى آله حق قدره مقداره العظيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما. الحمد لله رب العالمين. أفضل صلاة وتم تسليما على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. ورضي الله تعالى عن سادة التابعين وعلماء آمنين وأئمة أربعين مجتهدين مقلديهم إلا يوم الدين. أما بعد. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. This podcast, welcome to the Soullutionz podcast. We're having a discussion on the evolution of Islam, and did the evolution decline in Black America? Did the evolution of Islam decline in Black America? And this topic is a very interesting topic because you could take it's starting from a historical perspective and standpoint. And what I mean by historical perspective and standpoint is because many of the African Americans, many of the Black Americans in America and other places abroad, the blacks abroad in the UK and Europe, and most of them are willing participants who traveled and made hijrah from the lands of the Black Balad Sudan, Al-Ard al-Habasha, loosely called Africa, which Africa is a name given to that land by the Europeans. Historically, when you look at the descendants of slaves that was brought here by force from Africa, the ones who was brought here by force, not counting those who came here freely in the voyage of the 70,000 fleets of ships with Mansa Abu Bakr, who was the predecessor of Mansa Musa of the Songhai Empire in Mali. They came over here before the fall of El Andalusia, before 1492. They came over here with, like, in the 3rd century Hijra, like in the ninth century, which is the 3rd century Hijra is like it coincides with the ninth century Christian era, or what they call AD, what they call AD, Christian era, or whatever, CE. They came over here and they did trade with the inhabitants here, traded their goods for gold, brought gold back to Mali, and then when they sailed back, when the Mansa Abu Bakr took a second voyage, he vowed never to come back to Mali, right? Never to come back to the Black lands. So it was Muslim communities that was set up in Cuba, and in all of them islands that are called the East Indies, or the West Indies, or the Virgin Islands. And they was only called West Indies because when Columbus took his sail, he believed that he was in India. So they called this the West Indies, because he believed that he could sail west to be able to get to India. However, I'm one of those who believe that the earth is in the sphere, is not flat, but and it's not totally round like a circle. It's a sphere, to where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Ar-Rahman, Rabbul Mashriqain wa Rabbul Maghribain, that Allah Ta'ala is the Lord of the two east and the two west. So because of that ayah, the earth is in a sphere. It's not not totally round. You know what I'm saying? It sits on its axis. Inshallah. Okay, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. So you look at the evolution of Islam with our people coming from slavery And you know, saying a lot of Islam can be embedded a part of American culture because Muhammad Bilali, who is the ancestor of Frederick Bailey, Douglass. You know, so they mistranslated his middle name Bailey, which is actually Bilali. You know what I'm saying? He was the ancestor. He led 18 Muslims against, you know, in the French Indian War on the side of the Americas against the French and Indians in the French and Indian War, but never given any type of credibility due to the his historical advances that the Muslims have embedded and established in American history. All right, so moving forward to the late 1800s after the Civil War. Excuse me, 1 second. Sorry about that. Into the later 1800s, where a lot of the Indo-Pak merchants that was the sub-Indian continent merchants was coming here selling silk and other products. That was from the Ahmadiyya movement. You know what I'm saying? The Ahmadiyya movement, which, you know what I'm saying, one of the deviant groups in Islam. I mean, their beliefs, some of their beliefs are deviant. One group, they're separated into two groups. You have the Ahmadiyyas, then you have the Al-Qadianis. The Al-Qadianis, they kuffar. They more like kuffar. But the ones who are just Ahmadiyya, they have deviant beliefs, right? So they did a lot of business with our people. I mean, with former slaves, the first generation after slavery. They did a lot of business with our people. So that's why when you have Islamic place in Philadelphia on 52nd Street, a lot of their garments are actually tailored and made to fit our style of people. I mean, African Americans or Black Americans, so to speak, to fit our people. And I'm kind of like digressing a little bit, but the point that I'm getting to is that the excursion after slavery, after the slaves who Abu Bakr Siddiq and others, you know what I'm saying, in the islands of the North Carolinas, who wrote out the Risala of Imam Ibn Abi Zayd Qarawani and wrote out the Fatiha, and you know what I'm saying, was half of the Quran, you know what I'm saying, and still maintain that Islam on them plantations, but under the shadows of appearing to be Christian, about, you know what I'm saying, to appease the slave master, because he had asked him, when he found out that he still wrote and understood and knew Arabic, to write the Lord's Prayer out in Arabic and give it to the slaves that still understood Arabic. He wrote out the Fatiha and gave it to him. You know, so into the early 20th century, the 1900s, right? Many movements has sprung from in among the African Americans to that they push the self-determination and actually pride, and you know what I'm saying, and looking for an identity to connect themselves back to their ancestors of being former slaves. A lot of them they still held their history of their families all the way back to Balad Sudan, to Africa. You know what I'm saying? So during this particular time, you had the Garvey movement, you had Father Divine, you had the Moor Science Temple that had started in 1913. You had the Nation of Islam that came from an offshoot of the Garvey movement and the Moor Science Temple of America during the early 19th century, early 20th century. the turn of the 20th century. And from this particular time, what was going on in the Muslim world, there was countless rebellions and uprisings. Hold on. And uprisings among the Muslims. And during this particular time, which actually started in the late 1800s with the Zionist movement to orchestrate an establishment of a Jewish state, and they was utilizing, the British was utilizing this effort along with other nations in Europe to push this agenda. To push this agenda to establish a state of Israel for the Jews. The Zionist movement has sprung up as a national nationalist movement that consists of the Khazars of European Jews that adopted Judaism because they didn't want to accept Islam because they couldn't drink khamr and they couldn't fornicate. They didn't, and they didn't want to become Christian because the Muslims was taking over the land of the Christians in Europe. So they adopted Judaism, and their language that they spoke was Yiddish, the Yiddish speaking language. That was actually a part of European language, not a Semitic language, right? Not a Semitic language. When they finally first trying to establish a Jewish state in Israel, the British they didn't know what to do with the Palestinian Jews, and they didn't know what to do with the Palestinian Christians. All right, many of the people that was spearheading the Palestinian movement against the occupation of establishing a Jewish state, it was also Jews a part of the Palestinian movement, and it was Christians a part of the Palestinian movement as well. Just to spearhead, give you an example of what was going on in the Muslim world. The truth was distorted and brought to us and transplanted here in America. That's why you had movements like the Nation of Islam or the Moorish Science Temple of America to give a distorted view of Al-Islam in America to our people and try to make it popular amongst our people. As a result of that, there was Muslims, there was already Orthodox Sunni Muslims here, like Sheikh Islam of America, Sheikh Mujeeb, Sati Abdul Mujeeb, who was Al Ashari Sheikh, that was given dawah among the African Americans, and he was refuting and debating people from the Moorish Science Temple, right? And Timothy Drew Ali, you know what I'm saying, that and Timothy Drew Ali, he didn't what he came with. He came to teach his people that he addressed their nationality. He was to give them an identity, an ethnic identity, because their ethnic identity, their nationality was lost through the course of being slaves. You know what I'm saying? So his religion, and I'm saying his religion was Islamism. Islam is not an ism or schism or anything that's related to something that is outside of the beliefs of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, which the beliefs of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah are the Fudullah Hanabila, the Ashari and Maturidiyya. You know what I'm saying? These are the beliefs of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah. These are the beliefs that we hold. So his people, they called him a prophet sent to them, right? Because they had no knowledge of true Islam. They had no knowledge of true Islam. So to his people, like Father Divine, he was a prophet to his people. They called Marcus Garvey the Messiah Garvey. You know what I'm saying? Messiah Marcus Garvey. However, he had Deuce Muhammad Ali as one of his advisors and supporters, and directing him and giving him some understanding and some teachings of Islam. You look at his self-determination movement and things that he established amongst for our people at the turn of the 20th century, after the first generation of those slaves that came out of slavery, he had established he had a shipping fleet. You know what I'm saying? So, established so many things. The Nation of Islam came from these methodologies and ideologies of self-determination and do for self. The Moorish Science Temple of America, they came with, not only they come with nationality to teach people a nationality and be recognized by the government in which they live, and to other nations of the earth, as being that this is their Moorish, that they're Moors, or they're the descendants of Moors, meaning that the tribes in North Africa, that they, you know what I'm saying, their methodology and self-determination was in regards to what they call uplift and fallen humanity, is being industrious. Being industrious meaning that establishing business, establishing institutions. It's 3 institutions for a community. It's actually 5 for a community to actually be vibrant. You must establish a hospital. 1. You must establish a bank. You must establish business industries, which is commerce and trade and barter, like a grocery store. You must establish law enforcement, and you must establish a military. Right? These are the institutions that you have to establish in order to be considered as a sovereign nation. That's why the Sultan of Morocco was the first sovereign nation to recognize the United States as a sovereign nation, based off of these principles that I just mentioned, and establishing establishing these industries. All right. Now, from that particular time in the turn of the 20th century, you had other movements, Islamic movements that sprung up. There was also Orthodox or Orthodox Sunni, what was understood to us as being Orthodox Sunni, all the way until the 50s and the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, all the way up until our present time. Now, in my upbringing, what I've seen is Islam being at the beginning of its apex amongst our people, at its apex, and then which was 40, 50 years ago, and it's actually declining all the way to the state that we are at right now. All the way to the state that we're at right now. And throughout history, and the reason why I brought this historical point of view, historical standpoint, perspective, is because throughout every point in history, the people who was responsible for aiding the establishment of a Jewish state and aiding the rebellion against the last and final longest running Khulafa among the Muslims, the Uthmani Caliphate, are the same people responsible right now today in misguiding our people and trying to keep them instilled as slaves to their ideology and methodology, to escape and leave alone our culture, our custom, and to not establish anything for ourselves, to leave us as Black Americans or African Americans or whatever you want to identify yourself as, according to their standards, right? To be recognized by the UN as a nation of people, or recognized by all nations of people in the world as a nation of people, you have to identify yourself with being a nation of people first, and connecting yourself back to your lineage. However you may do it now, either by historical account from your grandmother, great-grandmother, great-great-grandmother. If any of us can go back to our 5th and 6th grandmother, I'm not mentioning mentioning anyone, but some of us can go back 7, 8 grandmothers and 7, 8 grandfathers, 7, 8 grandfathers, mother side and father side. And so I'm not talking about those who can do that, but those who have a sense of knowledge of self. They know who they are. They know who their Lord is, and they know that what's embedded in their natural fitra, they can connect back to. They can connect back to. So I'm gonna start in the 70s, right? And in the 70s, it's still, so I still this is a report or account a report of from people, old elders that I've spoke to growing up, how things were in the 70s, and then what I witnessed in growing up in the 80s, and what I witnessed growing up in the 90s. From the height of Islam in the 70s, it was about community, it was about jama'ah, it was about leadership, and it was about giving allegiance and dedication and commitment to that leadership. Not just the leadership, but more sort of movement. Many people that came out of the Nation of Islam, they was more dedicated to the movement and the work in the movement than they was to the leader, the one who established it. They loved the leader who established it. They'll die for the leader, they'll kill for the leader, but their motivation was that motivation of do for self, right? They wasn't really focused a whole lot on education. And when I was coming up, I was dealing with a lot of old timers that was from that era, that they explained to me, said many of us were not educated because we was busy in the field soldiering, right? We was busy in the field soldiering, whatever it was that they was doing, establishing business, getting brothers set up that came home from the prison, selling newspapers, bean pies, opening up gas stations or whatever. Because in Chicago in the 60s and the 70s, it was more black-owned businesses in the 60s and the 70s than it was any time in Chicago, in the history of Chicago. Legitimate businesses. I'm not talking now illegitimate businesses. There was the connected to organized crime. That was back in the beginning, the turn of the 19th century, which, you know what I'm saying, it was people that was Muslim among the African Americans at that time, but a lot of them wasn't Nation of Islam, and many of them wasn't Moor Science Temple neither. They was Orthodox Sunni, and some of the old heads that I know from Chicago, they can if they're watching, they can correct me on this at any time. So all they have to do is just put a comment in the comment section. I'll read it and I'll be able to to navigate it and expound on it, right? But so you have in the 70s where Islam was at its height. You know what I'm saying? I'm in Philadelphia now, so this was like the Islam history in Philadelphia is much more older and richer than Chicago, than history and Islam in Chicago. However, a lot of Muslims in Chicago still count their years of being with the Nation of Islam before the first resurrection, which was in the early 60s, late 50s. Before the first resurrection, they consider themselves as being Muslim. All right, they consider themselves as being Muslim during that, and then not until 1975, when Elijah Muhammad died, was when they realized that they were never Muslim, that was his religion. However, look at the dynamics of keeping our people asleep. In 1959, Elijah Muhammad, his son Jabir, Daniel Kareem, and Akbar, they was invited to Arabia, to Arabia. They was met in the courtyard of the Kaaba, and one of the representatives of the king came to Elijah Muhammad and asked him, did he believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and did he believe in Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? He had came there to receive some money that they was going to donate to the Nation of Islam, to his movement in America. He told them, yes, I believe. So he was like, he told him, he said, look, we're having a banquet tonight where we're going to announce that we're going to donate $18 million to your cause. While they was at the banquet, after some time went on there before they had made the announcement, it was a blonde-haired, blue-eyed Arab that sat directly across the table from Elijah Muhammad, and he looked at he turned to his son, he said, lo and behold, they got the devil sitting right amongst us. And Jabba, lawyer Hamahu, he said, man, my father really believed what he's teaching. So this is what he was teaching the people, right? The fast forward into the 70s, during that whole fitna there, it was like 18 communities that was in America that was among African Americans. They wanted to make the Nation of Islam. Farrakhan, when he transitioned from he had asked Imam Warabdeen Muhammad, could he start the Nation of Islam back up the way that he knew it when he came into the Nation of Islam. He gave him the okay to do it. They wanted to make Farrakhan the leader of all the Muslims in America. Everyone agreed except for one movement, the Dar Islam movement. And I'm only repeating what was transmitted to me, right? What was transmitted to me. The Dar Islam movements. Because they refused, a lot of the organizations among African Americans, they was like trying to take them out. One of my teachers, Khalifa Jamil, lawyer Hamahu, he had got injured in one of the attacks on the masjid. He was from there, put him in the wheelchair, and he was in the wheelchair from that time all the way up until the time when I was learning from him. He was part of the Dar Islam movement, and he was one of the brothers from the Dar Islam movement that went with Sheikh Mubarak Ali Shah Jilani, rahmatullahi alayhi salam, and splitting the Dar Islam movement. Some of the founders of the Dar Islam movement went with Sheikh Jilani, and some brothers from the Dar Islam movement went with Sheikh Jilani, and the others from the Dar Islam movement stayed and established a new Amir. A new Amir, I believe Imam Jamil Ameen became the Amir at that time. All right, so that was the split. You follow what I'm saying? And they during that was like the split happened in like the 80s. But this incident I'm talking about, it happened like the late 70s, 79, 78 or 79. You know what I'm saying? And my teacher, he had expressed that this, he had expressed when we asked him about it, that this was one of their methods, one of the methods of the Wahhabiyya movement to keep our people divided. Right, and going at each other, dangling carrots in front of us, dangling carrots in front of us, and as a result, continuously sparked the publication and spreading of their books among the African Americans. Right, most of the material that was being read in the 80s and the 70s was either from the Indo-Pak continent, sub-Saharan Indian continent, basically Hanafi fiqh, or it was coming out of Saudi, right? Or it was coming out of Saudi. These was the two resources of Islamic knowledge that was coming through America and being flooded in America at this time, right? So in the 80s, it was about movement. In the 90s, it started dwindling down from movement and community and Jamaat to individualism. And this is what actually sparked the decline of the evolution of Islam in the Black community. Why? Because 95, 96, 97, during that time, they stopped using the term Wahhabi, and they came up with this new innovative word, Salafiyah, to associate themselves with their following the way of the Salaf, not really really recognizing and realizing that if you're following one of the four madhahib and you're following one of the three schools of creed, that you're actually following the Salaf. Everything came from obedience. When you what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, what was narrated from the Sahaba and the Tabi'in and the Tabi'in, to things, narrations from people that want to hijack the minds and the hearts of the people. So things that was established that Muslims don't do. Muslims don't drink. Muslims don't smoke. Muslims don't smoke marijuana. Muslims don't use drugs. Muslims don't fornicate. Muslims don't do any of them things, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala afflicting the Muslims with these same behaviors as a result of having sympathy or sympathy and sensitivity towards these actions, towards these well-known haram actions. So now we're in 2022, to where the Muslims are engaged in so many different acts of disobedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to the point to where it's becoming the norm. Hold on one second. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Alhamdulillah, please forgive me. So to continue, to continue, I kill, man. Inshallah ta'ala, man. When I get some more, I'm gonna make sure I got your size, inshallah. You want the same thobe? I'm gonna have some different designs coming in. These are one of the thobes I was selling a couple of years ago. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. All right, so to continue, the Muslims are afflicted and engaged in so many different sayyats, to the point to where in our society, to many of the Muslims, new Muslims, old Muslims, and non-Muslims, it's becoming like a cultural norm. So our focus has been switched from learning and practicing, and also looking like a Muslim in the outward appearance, and our behavior and our thought, thinking like a Muslim and behaving like a Muslim, to only the outward show, only the outward appearance. If you got a nice little crispy big thobe, you know what I mean? I kind of like envy the brothers who can grow a big beard, you know what I mean? Because this all I can grow right here, you know what I'm saying? Or I just rock a goatee or whatever, you know what I'm saying? And the nice little crispy white thobes, you know what I'm saying? The sisters with the niqab on, the full to watch the burqa, you know what I'm saying, all the way to the feet. Islam has become a fashion show, or show and tell, instead of actual character transformation, which is actually the basis and the foundation of the Sunnah of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, because Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam came to perfect perfect character. All right, to perfect perfect character, to exemplify perfect character. So the foundation of Islam is based off and formulated from the Hadith of Jibril. The correct belief about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what is wajib, what is jahiz, and what is mustahil, what is necessary, what is possible for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what is impossible for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The person who is sound in that, they know their Lord. They know their Lord. And the person who knows how to fulfill the obligations of worship. You know what I'm saying? They know the classifications of water. They know the acts of tahara. They know the acts of fitra. You know what I'm saying? Where they do the shave in the pubic hairs, or plucking out the pubic hairs and the underarm hairs. These are acts of fitra that you must, and clipping the nails and fingernails and toenails. These are acts that you cannot go past 40 days without doing. Or this will invalidate your istinja, your istibra, your istijmar, and this will invalidate your wudu and your ghusl if these things are not done. And the person who knows how to pray, you know what I'm saying, the conditions of the prayer. I mean the conditions of the prayer. Know the sunnahs, the fara'id, the sunnahs, and the fada'il, the obligatory acts, the traditional acts, and the fada'il, which is the somewhat in retrospect praiseworthy acts. You know what I'm saying? That it's not sunnah, it's not fault, but these actions, these fada'il, will raise your maqam with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because you're doing these things, and it will raise your maqam in regards to establishing and practicing the sunnah. To pan zakat, or giving sadaqah, fasting the month of Ramadan, which we're getting ready to start in the next 14 days from now, inshallah. 15 to 14 days from now, inshallah, we'll be fasting Ramadan, right? And then making hajj, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you the means to do so, and he invites you to his house. Because you got to make a person who's not invited by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I don't care if you have the money, you can have the money, you can have the visa, you can have all of that, but if Allah ta'ala didn't invite you, you're not gonna go. You're not gonna go. So and he gives you the means. The means not just being the money, but the invitation is the means, right? To but it was also to the things that is necessary, that purifies the heart, purifies the mind, purifies the character, right? Which is ilmu ihsan, to where ilmu ihsan is having fearful awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is described as taqwa, and knowing that Allah ta'ala is always watching. That's when in your worship and in everything that you do that's related to worship, even this business that's taking care of your family, you know, if it's having relations with your wife, you know what I'm saying, building things in the community, all of these things are related to worship. And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as though you see him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you cannot see him, but you know that he sees you. So your fearful awareness, your taqwa, is always going to check you based off the fact that you have sound belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you have established ahkam of implementing and practicing Islam. You know what I'm saying? All of the rules that's related to Islam. And this is what guides you into transforming your character, implementing the science of Ihsan, or Tasawwuf, or Sufism, right? You know, so I'm not afraid to use these boogeyman terms, Sufism, Tasawwuf, because, you know what I'm saying, this is our path. This is our path. This is what the Prophet ﷺ had told the Sahaba, that Jibril came to teach you your deen. So everything that comes after them three sciences that applies to Islam, that's the foundation. So we've moved away from a lot of that. We moved away from that to the point to where we so sensitive to certain behaviors that we don't look at it as being haram. We don't look at it as being wrong. We don't make a sincere repentance to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to actually do due diligence to stay away from these things. That, you know, so that's why in this time now, the decline went from the 90s, the 2000s, early 2000s, the mid 2000s, the 10,000s, and now we're in the 2020s. You know, so we're getting closer and closer to Yom Qiyamah. We're also getting closer and closer to the to the appearance of Imam Mahdi and the Dajjal. Our objective in our time now is to prepare for the advent of Imam Mahdi, to prepare for when the Dajjal comes. Because if you're not practicing your deen, and you're not being mindful, and you're not being having fearful awareness, then when these final signs of the hour are, you know, come, by the time the sun rises in the west and set in the east, where no more Toba is accepted, everyone who's not really on, you know, on point will be jammed up. They'll be jammed up. You know, so, you know, this is you know, Amir Khalil done already chimed in. The other two guests, they ain't chimed in yet, but inshallah we'll be seeing them shortly. We've already I've already been talking almost an hour, so and that's really like long-winded for me. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm real very short-winded. I give like 10-minute cook bars, 5-minute cook bars, and then we make the salat. And sometimes, you know, so depending on the topic, I might be long-winded, like that historic khutbah I gave a few weeks ago, where I talked almost an hour in, like 39 minutes, right? And one of the coldest days in Philadelphia in the winter. You know what I'm saying? Okay, subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. You know what I'm saying? Amir Khalil, you can go ahead, chime in or whatever.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. رضي الله تعالى عنه وسرد التابعين وعلماء عاملين وأئمة أربعة المجتهدين ومقلديهم إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Alhamdulillah. So the topic is about the evolution of Islam. And is it declining for Black America? Right? Now, what I want to mention of the things is, in your mind, I want you to have the mind of a social scientist, right? And I want you to think, and for those who are familiar with Islam, I want you to look at the accomplishments of what's been accomplished over the years, right? This isn't to discredit or take away from the elders, our pioneers before us. However, it is to show that we have to continue the work. Continue to work. It's not to, discredit what has already been put down before us. We've had others before us, other communities before us, our elders, and even up till now. So to begin, I want you to look at this. The earlier, our elders, many of their Islamic movements, whether they were teaching the true, pure Islam, or whether they were teaching a pseudo Islam. And we know that a lot of the more famous groups taught a false doctrine as far as belief wise. However, it was an alternative. It was an alternative, and it opened a lot of doors. It opened a lot of doors of investigation, to research history. It is almost like a navigation, like a roadmap. Now, the thing is this: the advocacy of Islam was right and exact, but the brand they were trying to sell in the past was not the brand that would have been accepted by Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. Right? We cannot say that Allah Ta'ala came in the person of a man, a'udhu billah, right? We know that Allah Ta'ala is free from resembling creation. We cannot say that there is another prophet and messenger after the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? No matter how much we try to semantically, say, well, a messenger comes with a message, and so on and so forth. These were some of the things that happened. Then it evolved, right, into um a more comfortable style of an orthodox Islam. So they took away the belief of Allah coming in the person of a man, right? And then it started to begin to attack other things within our belief of the Muslims, right? Like, for instance, when you used to speak of the akhirah, I'm not gonna like put names and things of this nature to anything, but however, this was promoted as a belief, like basically any of the miracles of the prophets, the healing of the giving like Isa ibn Maryam, giving the blind the ability to see. They say no, that didn't really happen. It was metaphorical. See, Jesus came to give the black man his sight back after being blinded by the white man, right? These things here are contradictory to our Islamic teachings. We believe in these things literally, right? So what happens is that when you have the foundation and it's corrupted at its foundation, so what happens is that you're creating a new type of Islam. And so then you had in the shadows uh, another group that was more orthodox than the ones who were claiming to be orthodox of the Muslims as well, coming, and they were, can identify them more so by their outward appearance. Now, if you go back to some of the other groups that popped up as well, some of these things that happened, especially as a youngster, myself as a young Muslim, coming up, there was a lot of emphasis on, what was the proper Islamic attire. Should we dress like this? Should we not dress like that? And then so those things became the focal point, right? Now, the thing what's important in establishing when you want to transform a society, when you want to bring about a transformation of a society, when you want to transform a society, you begin the transformation by education. If you take a look at the Nation of Islam and look at, one of the things what they promoted in their ideology was that they wanted to raise and boost the esteem of black people in America. And so then what happened is they wanted to break the reliance that people had in white supremacy. So they would, say things, such as, the white man was either the devil or he had devilish ways, right? And and they will point out, and some things it had a lot of truth to it, and some things was exaggerated, right? But then they also had their own aqidah, the Yaqub, the big head scientist, and all of that stuff as well, right? So but what was noticed was that when you started talking about the belief of the afterlife, these things, this was a problem. This was a problem. This was problematic for the those pseudo groups, right? It was problematic for them. Meaning, if you talked about paradise, it was hold on. Alexa, stop. Thank you. Excuse me, y'all. So anyway,
Alexa don't like you.
Alexa was trying to remind me that it was time for Salat. Like my one sheikh told me, you got to make technology submit to you. You got to make it obey Allah. It's in Allah. Allah is giving you control of technology. So you have to make it worship Allah Ta'ala as well. But so anyway, so these things were ideologies, and they attacked a certain level that was problematic with people. They built people's confidence. But what you also found was that they did what? They had teaching. They had to indoctrinate. The people had to learn. Now, if you're having this movement, right, we've evolved. I mean, we went from false prophets, claims of false gods, right, to Sati Majid, getting fatwa, issued against these heretical beliefs, right? Al Hajj Malik Shabazz, aka Malcolm X, come back refuting these type of heretical beliefs. Imam Muhammad, Rahmatullahi alayhi, giving his brand of Islam, which wasn't totally free from heresy, right? But he gave a brand that was the alternative to the NOI. It was an alternative, right? And it was more authentic than what they just left. And some of those things happened, and then the emergence, while all this is still going on, you had the head of the Wahhabi still poking it, poking and poking and poking. And so they seem more orthodox, more traditional than the groups that were already out there. Each group that came seemed, more traditional than the last group that left, right? So, you had these things. And so then you had things as such, men wearing turbans. They were wearing thobes. They were wearing cuffs, leather socks, and those things. And so the clapback was to the other group, I ain't no Arab. You dressing like an Arab, And so what you found was that the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was being disregarded, right? There's not going to be any success trying to exclude the Prophet Muhammad, the son of Abdullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, right? This is something that's very important, and this is where we've noticed over the years there was a problem with the Risala, there was a problem with the belief in Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, and then here it was the mockery and the ridicule. Usually when you're trying to break a person's confidence in a thing, you begin to ridicule them by making mockery, making mockery of them. The same way the Quraysh used to do the Prophet ﷺ, right? They made mockery. But how do you make the believers stand strong in the face of that mockery? Even like the whole term, the haram police, right? That's a mockery. That's a mockery because what does Allah Ta'ala tell us in the Quran to do what? Amalu bil ma'ruf wa nahy al munkar, right? And a lot of our Islamic ancestors understood this, like the Darul Islam movement, right? Or the Fuqara. That was part of their mantra. We're gonna enjoy the good, forbid the evil. We fight against oppression, even if it's against ourselves, and so on and so forth, right? They took these things. And not only did they advocate this, verbally, but they also tried to live it as well, right? Even if you talk about how they split into the two communities with the Fuqara and the Darul Islam, but they both stuck to their objective. You can argue that all you want to about their differences on what they disagreed with in a religious capacity or a dini capacity, but both of them still worked hard towards establishing and in the struggle to determine themselves. Right now, what happened is with the doors, what the doors had opened, and this was a conversation we had, with some other brothers. There was a thing that Malcolm said. It's a statement of Malcolm, is his latter statements. He was talking about his observation of people who resisted white supremacy and colonization. And he said that he realized that there was one group, I think it was some Asians, I think it was the Vietnamese. He said that they had their, nationalism, and they also had their political belief that was backing them, right? And he said that he believed the thing that would assist the Black Americans in America is Islam and Black nationalism, right? If you accompany the two of them together, then it would strengthen. Now, like I said, I mentioned the Darul Islam movement. I mentioned the Fuqara, right? Now, also, what happened is what was significant about Malcolm is that you found all of these foreign groups, other than American nationals, was pulling at Malcolm, constantly trying to get him to abandon, his mission, which was to empower his people and empower them through Islam, right? And and light the fire of them having self-determination. Okay. Now this is something that's very important, and I know when it comes to these particular topics, a lot of our young men, they just kind of like be like, oh boy, here we go again, And what's going to happen is you're going to miss the boat. You can talk all this Arabic. Matter of fact, people have been talking Arabic for over 20 years. People have been accusing people of not knowing no deen. But one thing I can tell you this is, and I can tell you this from observation, some of our elders have a work ethic that will put a young man to shame. They may not have as much knowledge as you. They may not be as clear in their makhraj as you, but they'll put you to shame, right? Where most of the young men, most of the thing that they're doing is they're just running their mouth, and they can go to a couple of catchphrases. And the thing that they're calling knowledge nowadays is not even knowledge in the true essence. All it is learning disputation, argumentation. Now, there's a story from Imam Malik that he said a young man came to him and said, "Yeah, Abdullah, oh father of Abdullah, I want to debate you." Right? Imam Malik said, "Okay, you want to debate me? So if you debate me and I win, what happens? Well, I'll follow you. And if you debate me and you win, then what happens? Then you'll follow me." He said, "Well, if somebody else comes along and debates you and defeats you, then what?" He said, "Then I'll follow them." He said, "Go learn your deen," right? There's a lot of wisdom in this. If you look at our transformation as Black Americans in Islam, and I'm telling you, everybody, put your social scientist hats on today. Put your social scientist kufi and kimar on. every Islamic movement that began. If I'm wrong, somebody correct me, but all of them began by attacking the last group that was here before they got on the scene. They're just like that man that came to debate Imam Malik. I want to debate you. Right? I came to debate. Yeah, we're gonna get it in. Right? And it's just like it's almost like a prize fighting. And so we're missing out on the actual empowerment. If you look at other nations, let's just look at a modern day Mali. Okay, look at Timbuktu. It's in Mali, right? The whole Shanghai Caliphate. How did it get established? How did it get established? Right? You know the guy you call Mansa Musa, right? He was known for being wealthy. You know, they said he had more money than Bill Gates and all of the rich people you have today, right? That's a big hurrah. But what was the thing? What was the thing that all of the Muslims would do? Internationally, on the international scene, it was a couple times of the year. Hajj, going to Mecca. People would go, they would meet there, right? They'll meet there. They will bring scholars back to their region to educate the people, to further their education in Islam, not to take on their political objectives, not to take on their cultural identity, but they took on to learn Islam in West Africa, right? I can tell you about Sheikh Uthman Dan Fodio, Taqaddamullah bi rahmati Ameen. Never left outside of the Bilad al-Sunnah and left out of the lands of the blacks, but he spoke Arabic fluently. His brother Abdullahi, a top linguist, right? How did he do it? Right there in his own land. See, many of us today, we believe like, yo, you know, you take me out of here, put me over in this place, that's the only way I'm gonna learn, and so on and so forth. But you'll never be able to stand the test of time because you don't know what you're made of. Right? It's one thing you go on and you strengthen yourself and you come back and you establishment, right? We lost focus. What's the goals? Right? Self-determination went out the window. What happened to, you know, employing oneself? If you don't have a viable competitive skill that make you competitive to be in the field of seeking employment, well, what about creating our own economy, our own job? All this type of thinking has went out the window now. Now we're more concerned about assimilation, right? And this was a problem as well. Well, you know, we can't be doing it. I mean, we even got to the point where we argued about whether we should use the word kafir or not. We got to that point. We were debating on whether the word in and of itself was signifying the ghayrul Muslim. They were the opposite of the Muslim. They did not believe in Allah and His Messenger, right? I don't know what happened. We started talking about, yo, you know, we can't call them kafirs because, you know, they didn't get an opportunity to believe. And there's no other term. We're only using the language of the Quran. So, you know, we begin to do those things. At one point in time, the celebration of holidays, you know, disbelievers' holidays, right? Those celebrations and those things used to be taboo for us. Now, we're trying to assimilate it, make it part of Islamic culture, right? All of these things. So it's a decline. The thing where our elders were fighting for to establish themselves, we're now going back in time and pulling away from this, right? And pulling away from it. So what could we do to change, to change this? What can we do to change this to make this better? Number one, establish education. Not just any education. You teach the sciences of the deen. Sciences of Islam is there in order to preserve the deen, right? Because the Sharia has, kuliyat. There's faculties of the Sharia that's set up. Preservation of deen is the first and foremost. Preservation of lineage, right? This is why marriage is so emphasized, and having children within wedlock, and wealth of establishing some sort of wealth to leave behind inheritance for children and things. These things bring about self-determination. It brings about self-determination. It's not a thing. It's not a thing that it can't happen. It can happen, but people have to be committed to the implementation of Islam. If you don't know, bring people to teach in order to grow, and then eventually you keep it a homegrown thing, right? We're not even thinking on that level. Each time we bring, some foreign national to teach Islam, and it's not everybody, but it's a good majority of the people. What happens now? They discredit the man that is capable, that has the same learning, even if that's his teacher, the learning to bring back to his tribe of people, right? You have famous books. Okay, this is my case making this point. You have Book of Fifth. One book is called Al Ashmawiyah, right? This book was written, but it was written for the people in his village. Al-Aziyah. This book was written, and it was written for the people within that vicinity, right? The conveying of Islam. We have to have an intellectual fortitude. We have to solidify and make our situation solid. Our marriages, right? Our marriages really reflect our jahiliyyah, especially modern day contemporary marriages. Our marriages reflect our jahiliyyah. You got Muslims beating each other, right? Women, men and women, right? Beating on their women. You got men shooting and killing their wives, right? This is jahiliyyah stuff. Women shooting and killing their husband, right? You know, I ain't gotta listen to no man. I don't need no man. All of these things are coming and they're undermining the very fabric of Islam. People need to see something different in order to in order to desire to pull away from what's already established. But what you have now is that we want to be identified as Muslim, but the practice of Islam is very weak and feeble, and we don't really advocate that or put it into practice, but we're always looking at what's better. You see, our ideology, is always better. We look for something else that's better, right? So these things, you have to look at the transition. You have to look at the transition. We hit an apex, and then we started declining. We hit an apex. We hit that spot, and we didn't even get, to our fullest potential. We didn't get to our fullest potential. We had glimpses, right? You have Dr. Malachi York, okay? Now, Malachi York, right? Uh, uh, One of the most heretical people to claim Islam up to a certain point, right? One of the things he did was that he had children learning Arabic that never stepped foot outside of the United States, right? And he pushed like for a cultural identity. Now, of course, like I said, he bumped his head. He had a couple screws loose. Then he went to the Hebrew National, Hebrew Islamic, whatever, and then the Holy Tabernacle, where people walk around looking like literally in Georgia, looking like hieroglyphics. With the little dog head and the little pictures of mummies and stuff like that. But it was shown that something could potentially be done. It could be done if you really put your mind to it. You wanted to, establish yourself and protect yourself, because sometimes a bit of a separation is a way to protect yourself culturally, right? Not arguing whether or not we can listen to jazz music or rap music and things of that nature, because some of the things that we've argued about in the past are now the very thing that's destroying our children, right? And if you look at it, the program of the Fir'aun prototype will never cease to exist, because why? That prototype, that Fir'aunic model, what is happening? What has happened with the Fir'aunic model? It is destroying and slaughtering our boys. When you think about the ages, when you look at a lot of the youth that are dying in the inner cities, what are their ages beginning at? As young as 10, right? And usually 20. They're not even making it to 20. Most kids are dying before 17, right? And if they're not dying, then they end up in jail or in prison. And then also you got to look at the increase the the increase of participation in homosexuality as well. That's also another problem. Then also look at the lack of marriages that are happening now in our, within the communities, right? What's happening? It's cutting off the family ties. One of the biggest things that could affect the black community is to see upright families. Is to see upright family and functioning families. This is something that, when you don't see that, this is something that you know, uh, hurts the enthusiasm of the people when they don't see families together. So now what are you seeing? What's more common that you see? You see households with one parent, or it's constantly separated, right? There's no more, encouragement of staying together. And you watch this, and you also watch this develop within the Islamic community, right? It developed right in the Islamic community, right under our noses, right? I see Muhammad keep trying to get in there. You finally in. So these things happen, and then so what became more of the focus? Getting divorced. Then they found loopholes, right? They took and played with the letter of the law and made it fit their desires and their ignorance. So the greatest thing that's killing us, the other thing that's killing us, and stopping our growth and why we're declining is ignorance, the prevalence of ignorance. Ignorance is preferred over knowledge. Ignorance is preferred over knowledge. Laziness, or being lethargic in approach, is preferred over action. You know, our goals now, we've even reduced of even having that family oriented mentality, community oriented mentality, now to just about an individual, what I can do for me and mine, and no one else. So this is what's happening now. So we're actually on a decline. You go from women, growing to learn how to dress modest and protect their modesty, now to, you know, uh, finding the most form fitting outfit, to show the silhouette of their bodies, right? These things are happening now. The exposure, you know, these are things that this is what's happening now to our community, and it's showing the regression. And what type of example is that setting for our youth? Our youth will follow us if we lay down the proper protocol. It was a statement I see today that's often quoted: if the man knows how to lead, then I'll follow, right? Well, what about our children? If we're leading them, they'll follow us in the same manner. But however, with our lackadaisical approach, you know, our lack of desire to learn, what are we leaving for our children? Now to the point now that a lot of our children will identify as Muslim, but won't practice in the capacity that Muslims will practice. You want to chime in, Muhammad? I've been going a little bit long here. Come on in, brother.
Man, I done talked 45 minutes, man. You got some more
That's
in
all.
you.
That's all right. Cause I know you probably covered a lot of what I mentioned.
Actually, you covered what I did not, some of the things I did not mention.
Okay. Okay.
All right, you covered some of the things I did not mention, and I purposely did it like that so that you could cover some of the things that I did not mention.
Right.
Um, however, this being the Soullutionz podcast,
Hmm.
we know what the solution is. We have to implement the solution.
Right.
Like I had said, one of the last things I had said before I had passed the mic was that we had the time that we living in now, we have to prepare ourselves for for Yom Kippur, because we're getting closer and closer. I mean, we're living at a time, we're living during this time to where people are looking at Islam as a joke. So I'm saying people are looking at what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised in the Quran as a joke. And if a person believes that Islam is a joke and what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises is a joke, that's actually a belief of kufr. That's actually a belief of kufr. That's not something However, you may not. You may have to take your shahada again. Then you may not. You may have to just make tawbah and keep practicing. However, it's a thin line, and it's very dangerous because you have. You know what I'm saying? We're not. Islam is not just declining in our society, but our integrity is declining as a nation of people. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? We have so many, and I'm getting on. I'm going to get on the Muslims now. So we have so many Muslims that's engaged in the zina culture that even before marriage, they gotta taste the pudding before they buy the ingredients. They gotta taste the pudding before they buy the ingredients. Meaning that you want to sleep with each other, commit zina with each other before you commit to each other. You're actually giving yourself away for free.
But criticize the one who gets married without committing
fornication. And accuse the husband of cheating if he takes another wife. Accuse the husband of cheating. You're actually cheating, and they classify now according to Sharia. What they're saying, what they're trying to classify as cheating, is not what it is in the Sharia. You know what I'm saying? Cheating is actually committing zina before you get married, before you take another wife.
You know that's interesting.
And that's very hard to prove. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made that hard to prove for a reason.
Well, that comes from the concept of the advocacy of monogamy, right? And some of our sisters, oftentimes they constantly, everybody constantly accuse the men, but our women aren't mature enough to handle polygyny either. They can't fathom the fact of another woman in a relationship with their husband without it being accused or being treated like as if, like on some Real Housewives of Atlanta type of behavior. You see what I'm saying? If a man gets married, it's for the times a man gets married, and every time he gets married, his wife wants to leave him, or she tries to beat him up, break his window, slash his car tires. What is that resembling? That is jahiliyyah. But the example of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? When the Prophet sallallahu got married, I think it was to Zainab. Aisha, she was peeking in the bushes and things, but she didn't come in there talking about, I'm gonna bust this thing up, mom. She didn't do all that, right? She had a certain decorum. But with us, it's got to get videotaped. We up here like this. Oh, you see this? What's going on? It's got to be a fight. Somebody's clothes got to get put out. You got to air out your dirty laundry. But when you get married,
gotta burn your books. Throw all your belongings on the front porch so some crackhead can come pick them up.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Put all your stuff in bags. Tear up your bookshelf and your wardrobe.
But the sacredness. This is what I'm saying, and that's also the other thing. A Muslim is supposed to be safe from the hands and the tongue of another Muslim. These are very fundamental things. And because I don't know, is maybe we just advanced so much, and now we're all fuqaha, we're all jurists, and everybody's a muhaddith and the big sheikh of general ta'dil, and so on and so forth, that we just disregard those fundamental things. Those fundamental things that you build on is what builds character. Those fundamental things that you build on is what build the foundation. We have abandoned that. And our ignorance is prevalent. Even if we're able to quote a whole bunch of ayats and the ruling from this sheikh and that sheikh and this term and that term, is still ignorance. If knowledge isn't being acted on, then it's not really knowledge. It's just information. Cut in, but this is something that's hurting us. How do we go backwards? If we once recognize ourselves as being people that are oppressed, and we know that the eating of haram food, haram meats, affects the dua. And the Prophet ﷺ said that the dua is a silahul mu'min, it's the weapon of the believer. Why are we going to eat something that's going to destroy what could be our weapon to fight against those disbelief? Because we need our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in order to be successful anyway. You know? So I didn't even cut in. Go ahead, Sheikh.
So you know, we're living in that time. Also to the point to where, you know, a wife will ask for a divorce, and because she believed that the marriage would be over, her iddah to be over swiftly if she was granted a khula. So she forced the husband to take her back and then ask for a khula. This is a bid'ah. This is an innovation. This is an erroneous innovation at that, because the khula, it still has the same iddat period as a woman who's divorced, which is 3 menstrual cycles, and it's 90 days if a woman does not come on her menstrual cycle. So, and this is related to the understanding of the ayats of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran and the Sahih Hadith. However, many women, they take the position of in a khula that is 1 menstrual cycle. That's a total misunderstanding of the Bible Nuzul of the Hadith that they relating that to. Totally different situation. This is not the general. That was not the general rule. You know what I'm saying? But this is a rukhsa based off the conditions of that situation crystallizing in our time, which it does not. You follow me? It does not crystallize in our time. So we cannot use that as a rukhsa. However, because people follow their desires and they're so engulfed in obeying their nafs, like they obey their thirst or doing what you like, you know what I'm saying, that they take this rukhsa, which the whole time you're still married. You're still married till your iddat is up. You know what I'm saying? Till your iddat is up. I remember like when one of my teachers, he had went and studied in Syria, and after learning, they had found out that there's so many different people that get married in Islam in America that their marriages are invalid. What does that do? That is due to lack of knowledge. You know what I'm saying? That is due to lack of knowledge. But we move from a time period where we took Islam serious and we took it as our culture to the point to where it doesn't mean anything, like it's the froth on the top of the ocean. And we have so much stuff that we got to point the blame at someone else in order to divert the accountability that we got to take for ourselves. A man divorces his wife and she got full-blown relationships with other dudes. Or he ain't even divorced from his wife yet, and she already got 5 dudes lined up, interacting with 2 or 3 or 4 of them.
Declining of Islam.
Normal. You know what I mean? The declining of Islam. You know what I'm saying? The declining of Islam.
It's more so like, Islamic practice declining. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. It's more so I don't want people to think like, oh, Islam is leaving, like it's getting weak because we're not practicing it properly. No, it's just us that's weak. Islam is always going to remain sound, and Allah will constantly replace a rebellious people with people who's going to love and obey Him, as He mentioned in the Quran. So yeah, I'm sorry, Sheikh.
You know what I'm saying? We have to remove the nigger that's in us and replace it with the Muslim. That means we got to remove that nigger thinking. We got to remove that nigger loving behavior and replace it with Muslim behavior, loving behavior, Muslim thinking. My definition of Muslim thinking is that you were born March 18th. You're born March 18th, 1972. 1972, right? However, your Islamic birthday is Muharram or Safa, whatever that day coincides with March 15th, 1972. That's Islamic thinking. Thinking like a Muslim. You follow me? You know what I'm saying? You understand that you come from a nation of people and you're living inside a country that have other people from where the mother country you come from that are part of nations of people, and they treat you worse than the white man treats you because you don't know where you come from. They don't want to associate themselves with you because you have no idea, no clue what nation of people you come from. And you may resemble many of the people that come here from the land that your ancestors was brought here against their will. So we have to eliminate and purify our way of our thinking. You know, so we have to in order to think like a Muslim, you have to practice it. You got to practice the deen. You got to practice Islam. You know what I'm saying? How many du'as do any of us make that the asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to change our thinking, to change, you know what I'm saying, to change what we love in our heart to what is pleasing to Him, what is in line with the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Many of our du'as doesn't steer towards that direction. All of us in the rat race to get a bag instead of getting some spiritual enlightenment to where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can bless us with farasa, with foresight, with deep penetrating insight. So when Allah Ta'ala blesses with that, we're able to see Shaitan's plan. We're able to see it. We're able to see how he's trying to manipulate and catch us up in following our nafs and our desires. If you following your nafs and desires, you're Abdul nafs, Abdul Hawa. You're not Abdullah. If you fear anything in creation, that's even the criticizers, then you're not Abdullah. You're not fearful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And fearing Allah is not just fearing Allah because of the punishment that He may afflict you with. Fearing Allah is fearing Allah because He deserves to be feared. He deserves to be obeyed. He deserves to be followed. He deserves to be held in high status. He deserves to not be attributed with non-befitting attributes, non-befitting, you know what I'm saying, explanations of things that is from the creation. To worship Allah as He deserves to be worshipped, as He deserves to be worshipped, as He has given you the ability to worship Him. That, you know what I'm saying, that's why there's no worries. When you rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you don't have no worries. You don't have no worries.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? This is what the Muslims are being afflicted with everything that the non-Muslims is being afflicted with. We have actual people who have established masjids that the Imam and everybody in the congregation is LGBTQUF or whatever that stuff is.
The alphabet boys.
Why? Because society has desensitized the Muslims. When you become desensitized, Allah Ta'ala afflict you with the same thing.
Destroy you right along with them.
Right along with them.
There'll be no separation. Yeah. SubhanAllah. So yeah, we acknowledge and recognize that the practice of the people has declined. Not Islam in and of itself. The only thing we have to do is pick up and practice, right? But the effectiveness, like for some of us, a lot of us, our problem, is that we're not properly praying, right? People aren't praying. They don't know the entire prayer inside and out. Some people only know the Fatiha. Some people only know a couple lines from the Fatiha. Some people know the Fatiha extra surah, but don't know the Tashahhud. Some people don't know how to make wudu properly. Some people, so, and you're not getting the full benefits of the salah. So that therefore you find it complicated. There's no change in your character. And there's no care to change. Right? There's no care to change. Education is paramount. The first surah that was revealed to the Prophet ﷺ was what? Surah Allah. Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. Right? These things are being neglected. And so the more that they're neglected, the worse things will get generation after generation. There's no way that you can have a child and feel comfortable that your child is not learning Islam. There's no way that you could be a Muslim and feel comfortable that you're not practicing Islam to the best of your ability, right? Or making excuses. Because the same way, right, when a person is hungry and they don't have no other way to eat, they'll find a way to get a meal, right? Sometimes even if they got to rob and steal, they're gonna find a meal one way or another. You have to have that in some for Islam. I don't know how to pray, but I'm gonna find a way to pray. I'm gonna find someone to teach me how to pray. I'm gonna learn the things that are connected to the prayer and so on and so forth. So has this decline come? I mean, look at it. Men don't even very occupy the masjid anymore, right? So it's a decline. We've been took the women out of the masjid, told them they don't have to come to the masjid no more. It's too many men around. Meanwhile, we allow our women to still go in the marketplace and and work. And I don't have a problem against working or women working, but why take her away from the community where she can gain benefit, right? And so then what happens? Where do most adulterous places? Where is the most adultery usually practice at? The job. The job. Usually the woman meets the man that she's going to cheat with at the job. Or the man meets the woman he's going to cheat with at the job. So, we're encouraging people to stay away from the masajid. And we don't even realize that we're working against Islam. Don't even realize it. So has the people practice of Islam declined? Absolutely. Absolutely. And it looks like it's just going to get down to the point, like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said. He said, "La yabqa min al-Islam illa ismuhu." There's going to be nothing left of Islam except his name. Right? So this is something that we're constantly seeing. There is a decline in the interest of Islam. There's a decline in the people in their practice of Islam. So if you want to, we want to close out, we can. If you got anything else to add, Sheikh, you go ahead. But if not, give us that nice Sufi dua so we can go home.
Oh, we ain't even been on here 2 hours yet. Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen. Everybody done cut out.
Everybody disappeared on us tonight.
Yeah, so alhamdulillah, you know what I'm saying? Alhamdulillah. I was really looking forward to hearing something from Imam Malik and Saleh, you know what I'm saying, to add to the discussion. But however, inshallah ta'ala, we can end, inshallah, end with dua.
Just before you do it, I just want to mention the next couple of shows we'll be discussing topics related to Ramadan. And during the month of Ramadan, we want to have discussions, and we keep it short because we're gonna be fasting. Nobody wants to talk long and things, but we'll be even continue having, discussions during the month of Ramadan. Inshallah, we'll try to keep it shorter than we normally do. We just haven't specified the time. Of course, it'll be before Maghrib, inshallah, because we're assuming that most people, they're gonna eat, enjoy the company of their family, and they're gonna pray Tawheed prayer. So we'll be trying to do it earlier in the day, inshallah. So next week we'll begin discussing things pertaining to the month of Ramadan. It's coming up on that time. We'll be talking about the issue of moon sighting and zakat al-fitr and things of that nature, those things that are connected to Ramadan, inshallah. Also, um, yeah, that's it, inshallah. So with that,
Share,
inshallah, I
share,
guess we're
share
gonna
the,
close
share
out.
the, share the video, share the
Share the
video
video,
to
give
your
us some
walls.
likes, give us some hearts.
Give us, you know what I'm saying?
Tell a
Keep the
friend to tell a
algorithm
friend.
going. You know what I
Tell a
mean?
friend to
Share it
tell
to
a friend.
different people wall.
Mm-hmm.
Keep the algorithm
Alaikum salam wa
algorithm
rahmatullahi wa
going. Like
barakatuh.
Salam, Abdullah to be catchy. And
My man Abdul Kabir Muhammad Al Maliki SS baby.
SF,
That's Sheikh
SS.
SS. That's right.
All
Alhamdulillah.
right, سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الكريم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد الفاتح لما أغلق والقاتم لما سبق ناصر الحق والحق وهادي إلى صراطك المستقيم وعلى آله حق قدره مقداره العظيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Wa alaikum
Everyone have a
assalam wa
blessed
rahmatullahi
evening.
wa barakatuh. Ameen. Ameen.